title's right, so hopefully none of you looked at the abstract and were just very interested in a restructure of a carer centre. So I just wanted to warn people before we started, I'm doing a living theory methodology, so I'm going to video myself, and if you're okay with it, I'd like to video the questions. I won't video you, but just me answering the questions. It become part of my data, and it will help me with my research studies, so I hope that's okay with everybody. So my question is, how do I generate my living theory of caring in the restructuring of a carers centre? So, it's all right, I'll learn how to use
you have to do that one first, and
That's
then
fine.
you can use.
And then I can use, okay, great. Learning about technology, learning everywhere. So for those of you who haven't heard of living theory, I know some of you have, I think Jack Whitehead was here last year and Marie Huxtable were talking about living theory, but for some of you, you may not have come across that type of methodology. So I've just tried to kind of bring out the key points of a living theory methodology. So it's ethically driven, and there's a personal responsibility for what you're doing in your research. The values emerge in practice, so you have to have quite a belief that as you're going through, you're going to see, you know, what are the values that really emerge for you in your practice. There's a methodological inventiveness, so that means that you're actually looking for different types of methods that are going to be working for you, different type of methodologies that you're going to draw on and bring in because they work within your value base. You know, they actually fit what you're looking at. I love this one. There's a responsibility.
Just trying to make it.
That's all right. Thank you. There's a responsibility for human flourishing. So that means that, you know, it's not just about making change for change's sake. It's about making change that's going to encourage human flourishing, so that you're actually going to make a difference for people that's positive. It's interested in different types of learning. So you start off with yourself. What's my learning going to be from this? Then you look at the learning of others, and then one that I'm really keen on is the learning of social formations. How can we spread that learning to other communities that we're involved with, so that it's not just about your personal learning, it's not even just about the learning of those who are around you, but it's about how can we spread that further. And then there's something called a living standard of judgment, so that actually my values become my living standard of judgment. What am I going to judge this research against? It's going to be those values that I hold to myself. So I hope that makes sense. There's lots of research around this area. If you're interested in it, actionresearch.net has lots of open source data, which is always really good. So I can use this now? Yes. So, as I was going through, the values that came up for me as explanatory principles were love, hope, justice and participation. Huge things, so I'm just going to go through them to give you a bit of an understanding of what I mean, because we don't often hear about love coming into research. It's quite unusual, so I'm going to start with that one. So I just want to make clear that this love that I'm referring to is not the romantic or sentimental, it's not your Valentine's Day love. It is absolutely a powerful force of compassion and being forced into action to improve another's life for the better. So, you know, that is actually much more an active love, and it's about action around making things better. And that comes from some research that I did last year, so you can have a look. That's open source as well. You can have a look on actionresearch.net. And I was actually presenting that in America, where I was looking at my theory of caregiving, and love came out of that as quite a strong. Well, that works really well.
That's much better.
Well done. Excellent. So this is quite difficult. I was trying to find a picture here of hope, and I don't know why, but I thought that's kind of hopeful in some strange way to meet Princess Anne, because what we did is we took carers out, and because of my type of definition of hope, so hope is not merely wishful thinking, but an active ability to hold space open for better possibilities. And I sort of thought it was very difficult to find a picture of hope, but most carers, most people providing care to somebody in their family who's not very well, would not imagine that the possibility of meeting Princess Anne would be in their life. It's a little bit of a vague, and if you're not a royalist, I apologise, but you know, she's very active and actually very down to earth about caring. And when she talked to the carers, she really wasn't interested in me. She was like, yes, all carers, what are you doing in your caring life? And to me, that was also something that was showing her value to carers. So, oh, I've got this in the wrong one. How annoying. This is meant to be my participation one, but anyway, I'll go through what justice means. So what I was trying to say is that justice is not the cold legalistic justice. Sorry for those of you who are involved in justice and don't feel it's cold, but I sometimes feel that the decisions that are made in court aren't necessarily fair to people, and it's not about treating them in the right way, it's about treating them against the law. And sometimes decisions are made and you think, well, that doesn't sound fair. So what I wanted to really look at is where you're really trying to make sure that you're treating somebody in a way that is fair to them and that is a right way to treat people. I know that's loaded with subjectivity, because what is right, but you know, that was kind of the best definition I could sort of come up with. However, the picture is about participation and carers being involved in social work education, which you can come and see next week, because I'll be talking about that. This one is also a good picture for participation. Maybe I couldn't find a justice one. So participation, I wanted to talk about, it's not just about saying, oh yeah, nod through, yeah, you've commented on what I'm saying, but not really kind of actively engaging them. What I wanted participation to be about was actively engaging them with shaping and changing the world for the better. And that's something that, it's a sort of quote that comes from Gandhi, or is not quite from Gandhi, but it's what he was trying to say. And I'm really interested in this, about being the change that we want to see in the world. And I believe that if people are able to participate, they can start creating that change they want to see in the world. So I just wanted to talk about the critique, because some people are quite critical of living theory. And some of the things that they say about it is it's not objective, because it's talking from your value base. And you know, it's so based on your own values, how can you possibly do research in that way? So, and I have to say thank you now, because I've had a great validation group for this paper that I've been writing, and is based on this presentation. So I'll just say a quick thank you to my validation group. Thank you to Zoe, who's been helping me to try to improve the comprehensibility, the truthfulness, and the rightness and authenticity, which is a sort of quick way of summarising Habermas's ideas on validation. I also need to say thank you to Marie Huxtable, Jack Whitehead, Robin Pound and Chris Hickey, who will watch this video and will be very upset if I don't say thank you to them. But what they've enabled me to do is, can you understand it? Am I telling the truth, or am I just making this up? I mean, I could be really horrible and just treating everybody in a terrible way, not living my values at all. Are those right? Are those my values, or am I just sort of making them up? Have I done the work that I've said I've done? And is it authentic? Is it genuinely me that's talking through it, or am I just trying to sound like somebody else? They were very critical, they're very helpful. So who am I? So I'm a practitioner researcher. My full-time job is being a chief executive of a carers centre. My carers centre works with about 3,500 carers aged from 5 all the way up to older age. So we've got a huge population, which means that we really need to think about clever ways of working with carers and valuing them. We've grown from quite a small, I started in 2009, we were quite a small carers centre, we had quite a small pox, about sort of 7.5 full-time equivalent, about £300,000 in income. We've now more than doubled in every way and have 20 staff that are working at the carers centre. So really need to think about, you know, what's happening there when things grow that quickly and that much. So what I was finding is my values are being negated in practice, actually. So I held these values, suddenly we were growing, suddenly we were having problems with staff, we were having to go through employment law. If anybody's been through sort of employment law and disciplinaries, it's very difficult to live your values in practice. You suddenly are part of this world of legalistic, you must do this, you can't do this, don't talk about that, they can't talk about that. And suddenly, how do you live love, justice, hope and participation when you can't talk to anyone? You're tired because you've lost staff and you're spending hours and hours and hours trying to gather evidence. You're so too tired and too busy and having to hold so many things confidential. You can't be open, you can't talk with people. So I was really feeling in this point of, at the beginning of this process, what is going on? Absolute mind-blowing. Really didn't think I was living my values in practice. Felt very negated in that. So I really had to go back to a re-emergence of my values in practice. So there was a big journey here. And when we began, we realised our staff structure had very much created an organic process of change, and we hadn't really stopped and thought about what we needed. So through disciplinaries, we were deciding to restructure a carer centre. Not a great start, I would say. If you could avoid that, that would be one of my big things to recommend to you. However, that was where we were. That's real life. So what I wanted to do was get back to my values and see how we could do that. I had quite a critical moment where we were saying, well, maybe we'll just tell them, we're going to do this to them, we're going to, not my values at all, because we were feeling quite bruised and quite kind of like, what's gone wrong? We're just going to make them do this. And then we had to kind of unpick that and say, actually, that is not my value base. I do not want to lead a charity that is going to do to people, make them do this, and change around them without them being involved in that. So it was a re-emergence of my value of participation. And that really led to dialogue, and I've just been looking at the literature of dialogue and really understanding actually how that dialogue was emerging, that we wanted to start talking again because we'd not been able to talk through those processes of the employment law and things. It's difficult to talk to the whole team. So we started that, and that enabled us to start acting on feedback. And we put together a session where the staff were able to talk openly and honestly, put all their views up and really give us that idea. They weren't happy to talk in an open forum, they were able to talk to their line manager. They weren't happy to talk to their line manager, they were able to give feedback anonymously so that they could actually get their true feelings in. And we're starting to move back to my value of participation. The re-emergence of my value of hope came about being explicit about the fact that what staff were saying to us is, we've got no, it's a stuck structure. We can't develop in our jobs. We can't develop our skills. We want to be able to do different things to help carers. We're not being used as well as we could be. So we were very explicit that there were going to be some job opportunities in this restructure, and that there were going to be some better career possibilities and the ability for them to use their skills more effectively and learn new skills so that they could actually develop that. And I felt that was about re-emerging that value of hope. The re-emergence of the value of love was really important, about being able to start reassuring people. In the process of employment law, it's a bit like when you have an accident in a car. You can't reassure somebody, you can't say, oh, I'm really sorry. You're always told never do that, you don't show fault. All these kind of awful things. Don't tell people because that can be held against you if it goes to tribunal. All these awful things. So actually starting to be able to reassure people around the change and trying to reduce stress and uncertainty. It felt like we were starting to be able to look after the staff again, to be able to really love them back into their work, if you like, and sort of, not just help myself because I'd been quite bruised, but help other people who'd been bruised. And the re-emergence of my value of justice was about really bringing in fair processes again, things that I didn't feel were just about the law telling me I had to do this, but actually about trying to say everybody has an opportunity to go for these new positions in the restructure. We're going to be open and honest about pay scales, job descriptions. We gave far more information. We had a consultant who was helping us with this, and he just kept saying, normally people don't want to do this. Normally people just want to do the minimum. However, it's no smooth process. Even with all of those values being re-emerging, people went through excitement, they went through uncertainty, they went through worry. It was very difficult to love them through the process and support them. So, I'm not suggesting that this was a smooth, I re-emerged my values and all of a sudden we were working beautifully. Didn't quite work like that. So we had some training together, and the consultant that was working with us helped us to sort of learn together. We managed to recruit from within the staff. People moved into new jobs. They were sort of promoted essentially. Nobody was demoted. We managed to find enough money that everybody got a pay rise. It's quite a success story in that sense. But we also learnt together, and what we decided was that the senior management team would learn with the new senior officer team. So we'd kind of put this new level in. But we wanted to learn together. So we talked about things like, we don't want to be about theory X, which is an idea where, it's carrots and sticks. You force people to do their work and they'll do it. We wanted to be like theory Y, which is about where you understand that people are self-motivated to do their work if they're given the right environment. I was really pleased about that because a paper I'd written in 2011 where I'd been researching my practice and asking the staff, what do you want, had said, we want to be given a good environment, we want to be treated well, and we will do a really good job. So those, that was part of some of my learning I'd done in the past. And also we were using transactional analysis, there we go, TA for short, which was really around helping us to manage some of the behaviours, because what we wanted to do was support people with the change, understand what we'd been learning. Really a huge learning through this was that change is very difficult, but trying to get people to think about being an adult, calm and consistent with their approach to help people who were feeling a bit up and down and sort of moving all over the place. It was actually about helping them to think, let's be calm and consistent and support you. We can talk adult to adult and we can move on together. So, the final stages, we had some new staff. Here's our lovely team, looking happy, look. So it must have done something, right? And we, as well as from recruiting within, we have 3 positions that we needed to go external because nobody within had gone for those positions. And that was a new stage of trying to develop a team that you had new people who'd moved up from within their peers, people who'd come in from the outside, and trying to create a team. Again, no smooth journey, but it was about trying to be true to our values in practice and helping that to happen. So what I've also done is looked at the learning of others, and you can see this video. I've got permission from Tom, who is our Senior Carers Engagement Officer. He was happy for that to be shared. And what we looked at was some of the things that he found was that there was a huge impact, a huge change. He found that he'd got some progression, but it had been frustrating at times. But overall it had been positive, and he was really glad that there was some appreciation for him and what he was able to achieve. But yeah, it's still busy. The restructure has not got rid of busyness. That will be another paper. Our consultant felt that we'd gone from management-led, systems-based structural thinking, that kind of where we were grappling with how we were going to do this, to process-led, values-based, organic thinking. That we'd gone from impositional to collaborative. That there were different roles, and we'd all brought something else to it. From the senior management team, there was improved performance, and that we'd really valued the feedback and given it in a massive tone of written feedback. So you said, we did. So I felt that was quite validating, that we'd really sort of learnt that. The deputy CEO, I think, still a bit kind of got a lot more to learn. So that's fine. Probably a good place to be as well. So the learning for social formations, I really believe that there's a lot to be learnt here about taking a values-based approach when coming to a restructure, not becoming systems-based and just working through what you have to do, but really trying to get to the bottom of your values, how you want to do that in an organisation. And I think what we've discovered is there are improved outcomes. There's more to improve, which is always the case with living theory. There's more to learn, there's more to improve. But I think there's a lot that could be learned, and there are a lot of charities going through this position where they've, needing to restructure and take things to another level. They take that from a values-based approach. I think there's a real strong case here in my research for improved outcomes. Conclusion. So I've used a living theory methodology. It's really placed my values as central, and they've re-emerged. I've used this word re-emerged because I think they were there before and I'd lost them slightly through the process. To lead a charity through a restructure. And I think there's been some evidence here of the benefit for the process and outcomes when values are used as your explanatory principles. This is how I'm explaining what I'm doing in this restructure, and that it's applicable to the learning of other charities and social formations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being spot on time. Any questions for Sonia at this point? Poonam.
Very nice study, obviously very positive outcomes. You have told the entire thing from the carer point of view, that they were staff, and obviously I assume that during this whole restructure they continued to care for people that they were. So what was the effect on them, and what was their reaction during the transition period?
Yeah, so the paper goes into a little bit more about the fact that the effect for staff, because it was so difficult, in fact I probably have missed that a little bit in the paper, so that's quite an interesting thing to perhaps take forward, is the fact that they were still providing that support and really well, but that they were going through quite a difficult process themselves. So that a lot, what we found is that staff went from being very carer focused to quite egocentric and thinking, what about me, how's this going to go? And part of what we did was take them back, and I do look at that a little bit in the paper actually, is about that we took them back to their values of being, they wanted to be carer centred, and actually helping them to get back to that place by sort of taking some of the stresses out of the change. so that they could stop sort of focusing so much on themselves, which meant that they were able to live their values more fully in their practice by being more carer-centred. But I have to say, they as a staff team, they were excellent because they didn't stop caring for the carers, but a lot of the talk came about themselves.
Can I have chair's prerogative again?
Yeah.
Unless there's another question from the floor. I'll do mine, and then you, Jamie and Margaret. I'm fascinated, Sonia, and I'm obviously starting to get a feel of your work over the last week in particular. Where do you feel this sits with 6 C's? You know, the compassionate caring that we seem to have lost in health and social care. And do you see that might sort of start threading through this work?
I mean, obviously not coming from a health background, I have to look up the 6 C's, but compassion, you know, certainly I think what I would say is, because you start from your value base, it's a great starting point for actually reconnecting with why you're there to do it. And I think, you know, not just in health, but in all of the large sectors, because it's become very target focused, and there's a whole other bit of learning that we did around how we move from not being about targets, but about being about promises. And we changed some language there, because a target is a very different thing to do. If you're actually promising to do something for somebody, you can start living your values in practice, and it still has a number, and it still has things you have to do attached to it, but you view it differently. And I think that's really helped our staff to go back to feeling they can be compassionate and live their values.
Thank you. 2 quick questions, Jamie and then Margaret.
It's just a quick question about the methodology. When I spoke to Jack last year, he said he found it really difficult to get it accepted in theory. And I'm just wondering how far it's come, because a lot has been produced over the past year even, hasn't it? I'm just wondering how you found it.
Well, I mean, I've been attracted to it probably because it is a little bit outside the box, but also I think because I think it's such an important thing to bring into the academy, this idea of being values-centred, and trying to encourage that, understanding that that's very important to how we take forward knowledge, that it does need to be centred in your values. But I'm expecting a bit of a struggle, and you know, validation groups are very good for that.
Margaret?
Yeah, I was really interested in that methodology. I found a lot of my values coming out in what you were saying, and my question is, how can this theory be applied to, say, more commercial situations where there are targets and that isn't going to change, etc.?
I would not at all say that the charity sector doesn't have targets. Our targets are huge, and that was part of the, I think, problem with how we were changing. Was, you know, one of the criticisms based on me is it's all about targets now, and I was like, oh no, that's not what I'm about. And so I think it is about trying to find a way through the targets to still be able to live your values. So there's a rethinking that has to happen. But if you look at what your value base is and how can I achieve these targets within my value base, so I think it's absolutely doable, and I'll make the paper available. Maybe I'll send it to Sonia and Mason. Yeah, well, I'll definitely put it on actionresearch.net, and then you maybe can have a look. And if you want to contact me, I'd be happy to talk to you.
That might be the best way. If you do it through Action, I mean, obviously we'll keep it as a resource as well. I just wanted to pick up on Jamie's point as well, though. In answer to that, Jamie, I haven't got the answer to that, but I think it's interesting that we've got our second PhD student about to start that will be using living theory as a methodology, also working with Jack and Moria and one of our own main supervisors. So I think this is a potential growing field for us as a university and a methodological approach. So
I think there's another one in the pipeline behind as well.
Yeah, so there may be a third coming on.
Coming.
So Sonia will feel like she's got a little team.
Got a gang.
Got a gang, yeah.
In my gang.
Right, okay, thank you very much, Sonia. And last but not least for today, I'd like to introduce